Hello and welcome, all podcasters, level 1 battle stations, because this is the first half of the final episode of Animediate, where we have watched the first 13 episodes of Neon Genesis Evangelion. What do you all think?
Yeah, so Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's a good show. It was a bit of a meme in this podcast because I watched it I started it late 2019, I think, and I watched it very slowly and finished it kind of as the pandemic was starting. And it got me into anime. I was like, damn, this is really good. I kind of like anime now. So yeah, this was the start of the arc. This show being really good. We used to talk about it a lot to make references to it. And then I rewatched the whole thing. I know we're already supposed to do the first 13, but I kind of wanted to see the whole thing, just so I could remember kind
the
of how it.
films popping up on Letterbox.
Yeah, I saw like
went through
everything.
them all.
Yeah, I've been quite obsessed with it recently, so I'm glad to talk about it and to share it with Ethan and Johnny, who haven't seen it before. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably like bring up why I like it as we go on. But I think the people who haven't seen it, maybe they should talk about what they think.
Good.
Yeah. So as a kind of recap and to set the groundwork on what the show is, or at least what the first 13 episodes are, it's I guess it's best summed up as being a kind of twist on the typical only school children can save the world from this existential threat and they need to get into a big suit to do it. But the sort of, at least at the start, the kind of big thing is your main character Shinji does not want to get into the big robot, even though his I don't know what I was going to say then. Yeah, and as it goes along, it's sort of getting. I guess it's trying to be philosophical in some places, horny for most of it, yeah, that's my brief summary without saying any of the things that actually happen in the show. I think one of the things that watching this has reminded me is, I mean, how much I like Cowboy Bebop and Trigun. It's the sort of other older animes that I've watched. There's something in the kind of visual style of it that just sort of really works for me. But yeah, but anyway, one of my early takeaways watching the show was how much it was making me want to watch Trigun again.
Yeah, I think Neon Genesis Evangelion definitely has like that old school sci-fi cyberpunk kind of styling to it. There's this great sense of like scale and also detail that comes through in a lot of the mechanical designs of all the effectively main characters, which are the big robots, and of course all the other auxiliary like set design, such as the cool geofront that they have, which is this underground like dome that they've built. It's like a bunker for humanity to live in when they're getting attacked by the angels. It's very cool, very cool.
I've never been too much of a fan of like big robot stuff, so I don't get on board so much with the design of the big robots because they just, I don't know, they just don't do anything for me, the designs of the robots. But the design for their bunker is it has got a very nice and defined kind of sci-fi style to it. But it just amuses me how impractical their base is because it is so large that like I don't know how they're expected to get around anywhere quick.
Yeah, it's a frequent problem that they have to take the train to like one end of the base to the other.
The thing that I'm a little bit unsure about is it has a ceiling, and on that ceiling it almost looks like a crystalline structure, like a city, and then it has a base, and that base, and by base I don't mean like an HQ base, I mean like the bottom of the entire chamber, the entire area is like a pyramid, right? So is this thing on the ceiling, is that meant to be what rises out onto the surface and protects Tokyo 3?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how like
Geofront.
there's a cool like shot early on where they say like this is how the city protects itself, and all the skyscrapers like sink into the ground, which is
Oh yeah, I remember
a cool
that.
thought.
I'd forgotten.
Noticed a problem with that though is that in the episode where the power goes down, um, there's you'd expect those buildings would still be on the surface because they weren't expecting an alien attack and it was in the day, so they would have all been up on the surface. And then the power goes out, and then when you're looking at the establishing shots from inside the base, you see that all the buildings have dropped down. So yeah, there's your little little
I think
error.
it always looks like there's like things on the ceiling though. I think it just more come down when there's like the skyscrapers come down, because it's not like the city is completely flat, right? There's still like some that aren't like sucked back in.
Yeah. I still don't get why no one seems to live there, which is kind of understandable.
It's a
I don't know why you
battleground
would live
city.
there. Though. Like
yeah, but
they evacuate people. I'm like, why do people go back?
I guess they
Get
don't have
out.
much choice. It is like a point that like people keep leaving it. It's like, I don't want to be here. Like, do you see how many nukes go off in the area on like a regular
Oh my
basis?
There's so many explosions.
I really like the detail that like a lot of anime do have like just throwaway big explosions, right? But in this one, you can like keep track of where all the big ones happen, and you notice that in the scenery changes, like it will pan over to where it happened, and there will be a big lake there. And they keep talking about it's like, oh, whenever we have to use an N2 mine, we got to go and redraw all the maps because there's just a big hole. So yeah, I quite like that.
That's a
Quite
funny
like that.
one.
There's a real like consistent sense of like these angel attacks are like having an impact. Impacts. Like, that's a funny word. From on like the society, I think a lot of it is like built around like trying to keep this like essentially like full-time like war economy against these angels like going.
But that probably comes down to my biggest flaw with the first half of the show so far is, and I will explain what I think the advantage to this is in a second, but we talked about this the other day. It's like Harry said this so well, and so did you, Tony. It's a Monster of the Week show, right? Each episode you come along, you know that an angel is going to come up at some point. No matter how unlikely it looks like an angel is going to come, an angel will eventually come, and you will have to fight it. Apart from a couple of episodes, and I'm not a big fan of that because, for me, so far the episodes that have been the strongest ones are the ones where the conflict has come from something that's non-angel related. It's still in the world. The fact that the angels exist and attack still feels like some kind of it still feels like it's having an effect on the conflict in the show, but it's not literally just a big battle, or as Jonathan says, they have to get into big robots and the designs aren't amazing, and it just becomes like a mech suit show. And that's
So
not
good.
that's
They're
what
so
I'm.
good. This is such a bad take.
But I think the angels
fair
do have
enough.
better
I know
designs,
you
but
don't.
we'll get
You're
there in
not.
a second. Sorry, Tony. The other thing that I wanted to say is that the part where I think that the show, even though it does, is like, okay, well, every episode we fight a new angel. The thing that's really good about that is that every episode finds a really new and unique way of setting up
Yeah.
some kind of fight between an angel and the Evas, and I do like that because it could easily be a show where every episode plays out the same way. It feels extremely formulaic, and to me, it still has that a little bit, but I don't mind it as much because they find a new way to surprise me each episode. They find a new way to make the battles interesting. You have to use a different kind of strategy to fight the angels. Some of them kind of ridiculous. I know Harry doesn't like the magma diver episode, but they always do
No, I
something.
don't like that episode.
Yeah, they do
At
break
least
up the
interesting.
pace
Yeah.
quite considerably with like how they frame the conflict. Like there is like a big sense of like the war on a macro scale between the human and the angels is them like trying to learn like how to fight each other, you know, in like different ways. Like the
Yeah,
angels are constantly like they're like adapting their strategy, you know, constantly like probing for like a weak point, you know, to take them out.
sure, but that's
Which is
why I
really
like the
really neat.
episodes, like the
Yeah,
one right at
yeah,
the start where Shinji runs away, and I know this is Jonathan's favorite so far. I think is the one where they have to stop the
Jet alone.
yeah, they have to stop the Ava basically, and I like those episodes because you take a break for a second, and it's not this big thing comes out of nowhere and threatens all of human life. You know, it's it's still in the same universe. It still feels like it's a result of the angels being a
yeah,
constant threat. But they do something different, and I wish that the show did that. I wish that there was 2 or 3 episodes maybe, and then one episode that's devoted entirely to a new angel attack. I feel like at this point there's there's just too many. It's one every episode, and
well,
it kind of runs into this thing where it feels like, oh, okay, we're doing this again, are we?
Yeah, it does start
to be
like that. No, it will not start. It doesn't start like that, and then it doesn't become. I think what happens is episodes 1 through 4 are like quite slow and introspective.
yeah,
Actually, one to
the
five.
intro
Um,
arc, you know.
yeah, and then it becomes a lot more Monster of the Week, which I think is maybe the weakest part of the show, which is kind of like the run of episodes we've just had, where it is a lot more action oriented. But like when we come back, it is very different in terms of how it kind of delivers its plot and what the kind of majority of the episode is taken up by. But yeah, like it kind of does devolve into like a Monster of the Week thing for a run. But also my defense is I think it's actually quite good Monster of the Week stuff. Like there are weaker ones.
Yeah,
But I normally think that they have a pretty good balance of like there's a conflict in the real world, like the characters aren't getting on for some reason, and there's a conflict between with the angel coming, and they do a pretty good job of like tying them together. Obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about like the synchronization episode, you know, other various ones where like they have to work together to defeat the angel. But I think it does a pretty good job of just being like an entertaining Monster of the Week show. But obviously, the reason like I think it's a really good show, and I think it kind of is so acclaimed, is the other stuff. Like it's the first, it's more of the tone of like the first few episodes and kind of what the show becomes, rather than the kind of arc you're complaining about.
I think they do a lot of stuff with the characters, like that's sort of hinted at and weaved in through the action arc sort of things. You know, I don't think it would be just as simple to say like, oh, it's, you know, standalone. Robot punches a big monster this episode, right? Like I think, like especially with, you know, the Jet Alone episode, but also with like the later one where it's like Nerve has its power cut. You know, there's a lot that they do with like involving like an overarching story of the politics of the world. How like Nerve is this organization that kind of has so much funding because it has access to the only things that can, you know, protect anyone, which is the Avas. You know, conventional weaponry doesn't take down AT fields, as they stress many times in the show. But Nerve is also like kind of hated by everyone as well. Like the Navy like don't really respect it.
It's
you know,
because they suck the funding
UN
out
kind
of everything else.
Yeah. They're like, oh, this is just like a weird program, you know. It's like a science like pet project, you know. And they kind of hate the fact that they're like tied down to like, okay, well, it's got to be these, you know, 14-year-olds that save the day. And I also quite like the more character like introspective stuff that's worked in. I think the cast is really strong in the sense that like you get this sort of like there's the main trio of the younger cast, which are Shinji, Asuka, and Rei, and they have like their, you know, like very like strong like characterized personality types. Like Rei's, you know, distant and like focused on the job. Asuka is very proud, and you know, and like bossy, and Shinji's just kind of like nerdy and weak, you know. And then I think they do a really good job of contrasting that with the older trio of characters, which is Misato, the director of Nerve, who is, I'll say director, like commander like all the battle operations. She's the one on the bridge saying, level 1 battle stations. Ritsuko, which is the scientist, and then Kaji, which comes in later on, who is like an old flame, type character who's a big flirt, and is being very mysterious as well, showing up in episode 8, the same episode that Asuka shows up.
But having said that, I don't know if I'm sure the show does more with him, but so far you could pull him out and I would not notice at all. It's not like he...
Yeah, he does just suddenly pop into other episodes where it's just like you just randomly see him exiting a lift that's got stuff. It's like, well, I was going to do something, but guess I'm not. And then you don't see him for the rest of the episodes.
He's there for like mysterious reasons, though. It's like very much that he's there to deliver Adam, right? They tell you that. That's not a spoiler. And then he's like, oh, I'm here for mysterious reasons, and he has a pretty good, hard to understand but good subplot.
He has a random conversation with someone in a cable car where he's just like, well, I wouldn't have handled it like that, but it's not my prerogative. Or something
when
like
is
that.
this?
Okay, he's clearly there doing some other scheme. It
remember
was,
what episode?
I do remember
the
this
Magmadiver episode.
Oh, one of my favourites. Nice.
Yeah, just think about it, because it's just what this series does is that the last scene of a lot of episodes is just like a very brief conversation that alludes to something more.
Yep.
Which I guess is what you do in a lot of shows anyway. But it's like notably with this one where it's just like you have, oh yeah, here's Adam, by the way, like the first human. It's like, oh, okay, all right. It's a good thing I didn't close down this episode like a second before it finished. Yeah, there's a lot of little moments like that where it's just like I need to pay attention for those last 5 seconds because that's where the plot happens in the episode.
It's layering in, stuff that will pay off eventually. But I think Kaji does have an important role because like there's this almost like a sense of like routine that is built up like right at the end of, or right at the points between episode 7 and 8, where there's a lot of repeated shots of Shinji and Pen just having breakfast. It's kind of shown that like there's like a sense of like rhythm to life. And then I think Kaji and Asuka show up, and they both do a really good job of like being like chaos creators in the scenes for both Shinji and Misato respectively. I don't know if I got that the right order, or the right way round, but you know what I mean. Like Kaji is there to like point out like the moments where Misato isn't always really like in control of the situation, isn't always being a sort of calm and composed commander type. And Asuka is there to be like, Shinji, stop being a little whiny boy, and to be like
Shinji
constantly trying to show him up. Yeah.
She is constantly talking about Shinji's balls. I mean, less so now actually, but like in the first few episodes where she shows up, this is like every other sentence is like, "Hey Shinji, grow some balls. Where are your balls, man? What about your balls, Shinji?"
Yeah. Shinji is definitely low down on the alpha, beta, omega, gamma male.
Yeah, he's
pyramid.
He's a gamma male.
Yeah, he's definitely a low T. He's definitely the original soy drinker.
I think the characters are definitely important, but like before we kind of like or carry on with all the characters, I just want to fucking stick up for the Avas, because like for some reason on this podcast the take has currently been that they're poorly designed and not like some of the best designs of all time.
They're definitely
like pretty much revived anime merchandise. Yeah, I think the Avas are so fucking cool.
They're super iconic.
Yeah, like the fact that they contrasted with like the bulkier designs of like the day, and they're kind of more streamlined and slim. I love the colors of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the mysteries of the show, and like you don't really know what's going on with them, and you get like hints as to like what their deal is. Like some of my favorite moments of the show are just moments where something happens with the Ava and a character's like, so that is the truth behind this. I think they're really cool. Episode 1 is a great introduction to them, where it's like Shinji's like, I don't fucking know how to pilot this thing, but for some reason he's the only one that can. It kind of moves and saves him. episode 2, which is incredible, and I do want to talk about it in more detail. I don't know if we have time. I love that you see him, and then suddenly it cuts, and you get settled into the status quo. You see Tokyo 3, which is like really cool as well. And then right at the end, you actually see the result of the fight and how, despite kind of running out of power or like not really knowing how to control it, it kind of almost has a mind of its own.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the eye at the end. I just think the Avas are like awesome, and I love the characters. It's a character-led show, but
there's some interesting ideas with the Ava.
Yeah.
I think it's worth to say, because it's what I said before I talked about the Avas, is how I've never been a fan of like big, giant mech type stuff. I don't think there's a design of any of them that I'd say I like. This isn't my thing. So me saying I don't enjoy the designs of the Ava in this show is more just me saying I don't like that. Usually the designs that are associated with those sorts of things, I don't know. It's not something that excites me.
Whereas the thing that the point of view that I take is that I guess I think they're all right, but the thing that I do like about the Avas is the way that, especially in earlier episodes of the show, the angels are designed in such a way that almost feel like they mirror the Avas, except the Avas look artificially built, whereas the angels kind of look like, I mean, they actually look like, naturally occurring beings. But then, but that doesn't even last, because towards the end of where we've got to so far, the angels have started to take a lot more abstract shapes. I did like the diamond-shaped one, but they just have...
Yeah, Ramiel.
Yeah, there's one episode where Shinji has to, like, stop an angel from touching the surface of Earth, and that the design on that angel is just like, well, that just looks like someone spilt paint on some paper. It's not
the big eye one.
Yeah, it's just too abstract to go, well, that's a really cool design, and then all of a sudden the angels and the Avas stop having this really cool, almost reflective thing that they've got going. That's more my take.
With that episode with the weird, big eye orbital strike sort of thing, I don't know, I found that episode fairly weak. I think partly is because it felt like the problem with that thing was basically that it was just staying up in the atmosphere and bombing stuff, and the only reason they were able to defeat it was because it decided to like headbutt the Earth. It's like, what? Like, your whole thing was long range destruction, and you're like, I'd better go down and run into those people with knives.
The whole point was that it was like its first shots were just trying to sort of track it, like aiming, right? It was learning to where to hit, and then it was like, well, I might as well just throw all of my mass down there. What are the odds that they'll catch me?
Like what the angels are trying to achieve, it does make sense that it does come down. The angel designs can be inconsistent. Normally, how good the design is how good the episode is. I find. Talking about the Avas again, I like the comparison Ethan was drawing between them, because a lot of the mystery is like, what are Avas? Because we shouldn't call them mechs, because like technically they aren't really mechs. And like, what are the angels, and kind of how it's all connected. I just love the way the Avas work as well, like the small aspects they focus on, like the fact that it has to be flooded with like LCL liquid. You've got the AT fields. Each angel has a core that has to be destroyed, and just kind of like all these like weird technical elements. The whole, it has an umbilical cord, and then when it breaks, there's a certain amount of battery time, which is always used to create tension. And I love that attention to detail, because when it comes to the best stuff of the show, when Misato, who's the best character, has to do cool shit while that song plays, and she's like, right, we're gonna get all of the power from Japan and give you like one sniper shot to destroy this thing.
That's such a good episode.
Spending such a long time on like the technical details of how this stuff works, I think gives you like more of a sense of like payoff to like the fight scenes. Definitely. I also think that like this is just another disconnected point, but it's a really fucking well edited show. Like, it's insane. Like, I think when I first started watching it, what really stood out is that a lot of anime is just kind of very generic in the way it's animated and edited. But this is like very striking. Like, it always cuts like on the line. Like, I know Johnny's saying about how every episode ends the same way with like a mystery and then cut. pretty much every scene has that, where it's like you get the conflict in the scene, you get to the point of the scene, you cut, and it's just really kind of solid cutting, solid editing. It holds on shots for a long time. It's not afraid to have sustained periods of silence.
Oh my God.
Like, it is more kind of artistic
really
in the way it's crafted.
Ridiculous moment of just over the top. When Shinji almost leaves, but then leaves the sort of thing properly, but then doesn't, and is just standing on the platform, and then just kind of stares at.
That's one of three really long shots.
A whole.
Oh yeah, they get longer, and I think it's great.
Jonathan, do you not like that shot? Is that what you're saying?
It just doesn't fit in that moment. It just feels really odd, because they like kind of are looking at each other, and then just at the end it just like they act as if that's the first time they've noticed each other. It goes on for longer than it feels like it should, that moment. Like I am. There's a good moment to have a pause, them kind of looking at each other, knowing what that means, and then cutting, but it just kind of goes on and has almost like goes back. I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It just felt badly put together.
I mean, I think the whole point of that episode 4, is they call it, the hedgehog's dilemma, and I think this sort of is setting up essentially the whole sort of theme of the show, which is about like how people interact with each other, how it's not really a show about Christian symbolism and what do the angels do, and it is more like a sort of like what people's mental hang-ups prevent them from just being honest with each other. And I think that scene where they're holding that pause, where they're both looking at each other, you get the sense of like that tension in the air, where they like clearly have stuff they want to say, but they just can't get over themselves to just say anything. So it just sort of sits there for a moment, which I quite like.
Well, I hope they dial that up a little bit in the second half, because so far I don't feel like I've been receiving as much of that as I expected from the quote-unquote introspective anime, which is what I've heard and what you guys have said about the show.
It is there. It is there. It's just, I think a lot of it is earlier on is weaved in with the action scenes, like especially with Rei, I think, as a character. Because she is very blank, she's very like kept to herself. A lot of her like internal thought processes and her hang-ups are like very, very subtle, very like reward, like keeping a close eye on her. Like in an episode, I forget which episode it is, like very early on, there's the episode where Rei has to do her second what do they call it, like test synchronization thing, right? And there's her doing the in the entry plug, and it's sort of showing the story of how it happened like a couple of weeks prior, which is how she got like at the start of the show she's very injured, right? And that's what gives Shinji the onus to be like, all right, I'm not putting this like hospital patient in the big robot. I'll do it. So yeah, I like that there's like that sort of like mirroring in the way it's framed, where both Shinji and Ikari, which is Shinji's dad, have that moment where they open the plug and save Rei. I think at the end of episode 4 and earlier on. There's that literally like the same like shot composition is used to like build up that reinforcement, and there's like that background in your head of like, okay, well, is Rei happy that Shinji saved her, or happy that she's being reminded of fucking Gendo, which is pretty neat.
If you don't mind me going back quickly, just I think when you were saying about the hedgehog's dilemma, it really kind of, they give you the key to the entire show pretty much in episode 3, of like how every kind of relationship is going to be dictated throughout the rest of the show. And Johnny was saying about the pauses, like there's definitely longer pauses as we go on. like some infamously long pauses. And I think the pause is always like drawn to some moment of like hesitation or kind of reluctance to communicate. And like it does, like Ethan was saying, like he hasn't got that as much from from what we've seen so far, and that's definitely true. Like when I was watching it with the knowledge that we'd be doing episode 13, like it's very clear at the point where Arno kind of gets bored with what he's doing and decides to make it more explicitly about that. And that's definitely the stronger stuff. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to say like how much I think Tony nailed it. We're talking about that scene in particular, and how pretty much every character relationship is kind of dictated by like either like a hesitation or a failure to communicate and kind of connect with other people.
Yeah, there are some good characters in this. Misato is my favourite, and then
definitely she's easily the best.
Ritsuko, because I really enjoy as well the kind of relationship they seem to have. I think that's part of why episode 7 so far has been one of my favourites, because it focuses a lot on Misato, but also it has a kind of interesting moment where you kind of realise that Ritsuko knew that it seemed to be the one that was in some way influencing or at least aware of what was going on with Jet alone, and just kind of kept it from Misato.
I almost missed that episode again.
Tony, it's a good one. The characters are definitely dictated by like two kind of modes almost. Like they have to save the world, and their relationship is always going to be dictated through, we literally have to like stop these things. But it's also the kind of like all of the moments and hours and days in between that. And I think their relationship is interesting because they obviously, and as you learn, they have a very long history. Like they've known each other since college. And when Kaji comes in, you realize that almost three of them have kind of been not a threesome, but they have like a very close knit relationship. And I think in Misato, who is, like, as I said, the best character, she's the most explicit. Like she's almost bipolar, the way she can just switch on from the kind of laid back slacker, living with a penguin, the kind of goofy music, those kind of like fun scenes, versus just like the competence that she shows. And it very much, like, a lot of my favorite moments are just competence porn, where it's like you want to see someone be good at their job, but then how that puts a strain in her relationship with Shinji. She wants to be this like creepy aunt figure. She almost wants to be his mother, but then also wants to be his friend, but then has to kind of use him as an asset. And it's very much a kind of worker-boss relationship. So she's trying to kind of support his mental health, whilst also completely destroying it by making him pretty much carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. And no one ever kind of sits him down and explains things to him. They just kind of they treat my boy bad. I really like Shinji. He's just like a normal dude.
Yeah. I
feel so sorry for him.
There is like the first episode has set this dilemma up really well, where it is both Misato and Ritsuko like talking for Shinji while he is between them saying nothing, like one on the side of like you can't make him do this, on the side of like you want the world to end, which is always like the crux of the show. It is always like the thing that like drives the fact that like this is like the weight of responsibility they have to shoulder, and just the fact that like despite the dilemma being about will Shinji get in the robot, has been memed since the show's fucking inception, that he is sort of left out of that conversation at the beginning, that he is constantly spoken over and spoken down to, which is then sort of reflected in his in his mindset, in his sort of like dour kind of distant sort of demeanor, which is neat.
I think his reluctance makes him very compelling as well. The fact his relationship with the other pilots is dictated by his reluctance. Like you have the whole like running thread of asking everyone why they pilot the Ava and kind of getting different responses. And I think, I know Ethan's not a big Asuka fan, but I do think she's great. As Tony said, the way she disrupts she disrupts the status quo in episode 8, which is a very entertaining. It's not my favorite episode, but I think it is pretty solid. And then episode 9, where it's pretty much like a two-hander of they have to learn to work together. There's so many like great symmetrical shots of them kind of being slightly out of sync with each other. You have a really it's maybe the only episode apart from like 1 or 2 that kind of has a happy ending, where it's like they have to learn to work together. You have the incredibly satisfying and incredibly well animated fight scene that I've watched so many times on YouTube, where they kind of perform the dance routine that is also a fight. Also has a great shot of the deputy commander with a massive smile on his face. It's maybe the only time you ever see that character smile.
Oh, man, I love that.
Yeah, no, for me that is the only fight scene that has stood out to me in the show.
I think
Yeah,
I
me
can't
too.
not love it. Episode 8's one. Episode 8's one where they have to like go on, where it's Unit 2 is jumping from ship to ship.
Yeah, but I also think that the way that fight culminates, I did say this to Harry, is ridiculous, where Masato's plan is to have the angel open its mouth and 2 battleships insert themselves into it and then fire simultaneously.
That's the crux of the show, is they're always betting on the tiniest odds.
Yeah,
you know?
I know, but
like their
she
plan
has
for the
some
episode
amazing plans.
12
She
is
has
to catch
amazing-
the meteor.
She has amazing plans, and that is not one of them. That is less than a million to one shot. No, I don't accept that happened. And they're relying on the Ava to open the mouth of the angel at the exact time and jump out. As the battleships.
Well, I don't think it jumps out. I think it's pretty consistent that they just expect the Avas to either be repaired or tank the damage of whatever explosions they're in, which is quite funny.
It's another thing with that episode where it comes just after you've had it established that you should never have additional people in your pod because it disrupts like the working of the Ava, and it's just like, oh yeah, we'll just have both of them in here for like no apparent reason. Even the fact that Shinji is just like thinking in Japanese is like disrupting this, but you know, that's a sensible choice.
I think there is a reason, and the reason is just Asuka wants to show off.
Yeah. She's very prideful. She's like, come on, this is my chance, you know.
I'm gonna show you how good I am. That's pretty much her entire character. She wants to be the best Ava pilot.
Yeah. That's that. It's summed up. They like. A lot of work has been put into like trying to decipher Ava, trying to be like, oh, what is the law mean? What is this deep symbolism? But like I think anime has a very strong point where it will have these sort of more introspective overtones, but it won't leave it up to chance. Like it will just have the moment where Shinji asks Asuka, why do you pilot the Ava? And she says, oh yeah, because I want to show the world how great I am. Why else?
And the most, I understand you might not be the biggest fan of the character, because I definitely wasn't at this point. But like, there are hints as to kind of like, I guess her past. And like, I think by the end you get a pretty good understanding of what drove her to kind of be this way. And I think you have like a very deep sympathy for the character. And I honestly, she does really grow on you. And it's similar to every character in the show. I think every character, it's kind of a meme if you read the Wikipedia. It diagnoses every character's issues, and they've all got like 3 Freudian problems with them. But like these people are like kind of like from like a traumatic past or present, have like really deep problems. And it's clear that Anno was like a kind of, he was very depressed when he was making this show, and I think he puts a lot of that into his characters. And I think it does have a lot of sympathy for them, and as it moves on and you kind of get more of their backstories and how that kind of motivates decisions they make in the future, it kind of really emphasizes just how kind of great and compelling all these characters are. Like, I don't think there's a single one I don't really... I mean, I'm not the biggest Ritsuko fan, but that might just be me.
There is a very nice small moment where Asuka looks at the Symphogear scar that Misato has on her stomach, and there's like a line where Asuka sort of like inquires about her past. She says like, "Hey, you know all the stuff that happened to me, and looking at that scar, there's like the implication that there's also something that happened in her past, and they have that sort of shared connection with, you know, a traumatic backstory. And Misato just sort of says like, well, we try and not let that weigh us down or align to that effect. And I think that there's a great, like, the fact that the cast, like a lot of, you know, anime will just be like, all right, well, we're making this for, you know, the age range that we are, you know, early teens, late teens, mid-teens, whatever. So the main characters are that, and then they just sort of leave it there. They sort of don't really deal with anything. But I think watching Ava, there is this great sense of like the sort of almost three separate generations between, you know, the older like Gendo types, the sort of mid like Misato, and then the younger cast, where you get the sense of like they still have their hang-ups, but like they have learned how to sort of almost like work over them, you know, work on top of them, which is really interesting. Really, there's a lot that comes out of very subtle moments,
and those subtle moments you're kind of talking about, I think they also, not only in the character backstories, but it does a really good job of like the world building. Like a lot of the lore is kind of stupid and it's not important. But like I love the way it doles out kind of information about the world. Like you're just in the lesson, the teacher's talking about the second impact, and you're like, oh, okay, so there was this thing called the second impact that wiped out half the population of the world. That's the kind of world we're living in. The way it kind of shows you Tokyo 3 and like how it operates. Suddenly they'll just drop like, oh yeah, this is Adam. There's this thing called human instrumentality that they mention, and then they don't mention for a while, with the committee. There's always kind of a hint that something else is going on. And I love the way it kind of very slowly kind of deals out exposition. From episode 14 onwards, it's going to get a lot more heavy-handed, and there's going to be a lot more gibberish. So I'm going to praise it for being like subtle and leaving breadcrumbs at the start. But yeah, that definitely doesn't continue.
One of the things I've noticed is just how much kind of, not quite, but similar to like past the Hydro Spanner dialogue there is in this, where it's just like, you know, analysing the entry plug, the circuits, all weird techno mumbo jumbo as they're like booting up the Avas. I do wonder how much of the show, if you were to just edit together all of those moments, how long it would last.
I think the thing I really like though, like this isn't really a spoiler, but as the show goes on, they just start throwing like psychology terms in there. They're like, his ego has melded with his super ego. You know, it's over 90,000.
Yeah.
The way they just throw words in, especially throw in like religious symbolism and stuff, is very funny. Because like people spend hours like really researching it, and it's not that just Anno likes the words and then just puts them in.
Yeah, there is like a famous line of like, well, why did you put in all that Christian symbolism into Ava? And he says, oh, because it looked cool. You know?
You can definitely, like, I don't want to overanalyze, but you can definitely draw like the humans and Avas, the Avas and angels, the Shinji and Gendo kind of man and god comparison, and how a lot of this show is dictated. We're going to get this more as it goes on, by characters' relationships to parents. And that might be like the main thing it's trying to say about human beings, is just how kind of important our parents are and how we are kind of pretty much just our parents. I definitely think there's something there. Someone could write something there.
Yeah, it's like someone could write something there is like the takeaway like you get from so much of this. Like it has, you know, spawned like this, you know, industry about people trying it. There's so many. I think Eva is the original like show where you watch it and then you Google Eva explained, you know, because you want a 2-hour long YouTube video that just puts it in even simpler terms.
But then apparently it tells you have to play a game on the PSP.
I think it's not a good video if that's its go-to. It's just you have to read the item descriptions and it can't, you know, summarize it on its own. But yeah, like there's definitely a lot there. There's definitely like a pattern to the way that Eva deals with like the relationships with people, you know, and how their backstory influences them, how they deal with, you know, responsibility.
Ethan and Johnny, do you guys want to talk about, I don't know, like just random things like favorite episodes, any problems with the show?
There's some stuff I want to say about moments I haven't enjoyed. Actually, no, I'll start with the best joke in it in episode 2, where Shinji is standing there naked, his dick being covered by a can. And then Misato just nonchalantly lifts up the can, and then there's a smaller one behind it that still blocks. It's like that is one of the best visual jokes I think I have seen. Anyway, moving on from that, moments I don't like, is I think the worst moment for me was when Shinji goes to Rei's sort of house, and then goes, like, sees his dad's like broken glasses that are there, like, maybe she has glasses, better put those on my face. Which, you know, possibly interesting as some of that kind of father-son sort of thing, of like, that's a token of his father's appreciation that he hasn't got, or whatever. But then that just kind of just turns into an excuse for him to fall on top of Rei naked and grope her breasts, and I'm just like, I am done with this. I do not need this. I hate that. That's an anime trope that can die.
Yeah,
Can I talk about the scene?
Yeah,
Because
I think it is included for a reason greater than just, wouldn't it be nice to have it in? But yeah, you go ahead, Harry.
Because I absolutely hate the scene as well. But like, I've kind of come to not appreciate, but I get it now. Because I've seen the show twice all the way through. I've watched the recap movie twice, and I've seen the rebuild films. So I've seen that scene 5 times, and every time it starts, I just want it to be over. It's so uncomfortable and awkward because it's kind of, it's an awkward situation, and like I think it's obviously meant to be deliberately awkward, because if you're taking Shinji as like audience surrogate, of like you're like you're terrified of women, you're terrified of sex, and you're 14 years old. It's like the most like harrowing scene of all time. But I don't think it's there for fan service. I think it's there to show just how little Rei's affected by it. Like, she just doesn't react. She doesn't understand that it's like an awkward thing, and she's not insulted, but it is insulted by what Shinji says in the next scene about her father, and you kind of it kind of gives you like a characterization of just the completely different priorities of Rei, and just kind of how, even though she's a human, she's kind of lacks these connections and is almost kind of alien in that way. So I do hate the scene. Like, I don't want to watch it again. I will forward it next time it's on. But I also think I don't think it's just fan service. But that might just be me.
It's difficult,
like,
because with this, because that is such a trope in anime stuff, of just like that. So many male characters. This is one of the things where it's difficult, because like, this is something from 1995. As for all I know, this created that, and that was the original thing, and it was made as a somewhat expressive thing. But just the language of that scene, to me, I struggle to interpret it as anything except sort of lazy and gratuitous. No, I'm not a fan of that scene. The fact as well that Atsuka is introduced like by her kind of legs first, and
well, yeah, to be fair, you do. Her first shot is the one where she's, you know, sort of like in the shade of the like light. You know, she's completely blacked out, and I think that, like, again, like, it is almost like a parallel between Asuka and Rei, where Asuka is on a flight deck, like a famously like windy spot to be in, and it's like, I'm just gonna wear this dress because it looks good, you know, and when you know, the classic fucking force of nature happens in the gust of wind, you know, it happens. She just smacks every guy within like a 10-foot radius with like an AoE swipe, like a Dark Souls boss monster, you know, and it says like, that's the viewing fee, you know. I think that's a point of contrast.
The Tory power pose when wearing clothing that is definitely not suited for a Tory power pose. You just kind of, I'm just like, yeah, I respect this person's vibe, even if they are incredibly annoying at times. Yeah, Asuka's interesting because like a lot of her stuff is like I definitely the first time through I was like, yeah, okay, so I don't like her as a character, and I think if I was going to accuse the show of being like leery or fan servicey, it would be in relation to that character. But I think part of that is the age that like these kids are like 14, and I guess like if you were like remaking it for like a UK audience, you'd make them like 16. But I think 14 is like a perfect age of like right in between childhood and kind of adulthood. Like they're technically still children. They're the third children. But
that really annoys me that they like as a singular they're like first children, second children, and third children.
I said the
it's
exact
like, no,
same
you should be
thing.
The first child, second child, third child.
Do you watch the sub or dub? Do they do that in the dub? Is that a dub thing? I'm pretty sure they say child in the Japanese.
All I know is that in English they say the first children and you are the second children, and like Jonathan, it gets on my nerves every time I hear it because it's a plural word being used to address something that's singular, and that just I'm sure it's either a translation fault or it's just completely deliberate, but either way, it's a grammatical error that really annoys me every time I hear it.
yeah, I think it's. But yeah, anyway, so I like that they're 14 because it's kind of like Asuka is kind of like she's obviously very advanced. Like pretty much the first thing she says is like I'm filling it in all the right places. She is like technically a child, but she kind of wants. She sees herself as an adult, like she's advanced in terms of like education and standing, and like a lot of that comes from her childhood. But yeah, she wants to be viewed as an adult, whereas Shinji, I think, more kind of wants to be like a normal kid. And the fact that he's in close proximity to two women who aren't like they're just kind of existing, they're just they're just living, but it kind of that makes him so uncomfortable that they. I think a lot of that stuff is to kind of emphasize that Shinji feels fucking weird about this, and he's just not comfortable with women existing around him. I think that's a lot of it for me.
Stuff you can do about like going through puberty at the age of 14 and all this sort of complex stuff, and having a character that feels like they have more maturity than they do. Obviously, I can't fully judge being only half the way through and what things they'll do with that character and what their backstory is that has led them to this. But it's sort of at the moment I don't have full faith that they will have justified this kind of over-sexualized nature of her. It sort of falls into this really uncomfortable trope for me of like the young underage girl that wants it and is mature enough.
I think the show like is pretty clear in its framing that like her saying she's mature, you know, and all that is like an act. Like every adult, like especially Kaji, just does see through it. You know, they don't sort of play into it. They're just like, okay, sure. You know, which is part of like her frustration. And she's like, oh, why isn't Kaji taking me seriously? You know, and then and Kaji's like, you're 14, lol. You know.
They should have had that subplot where Kaji tries to triangulate the age of consent laws in Germany, Japan, and America.
We're in international waters right now. You know what that means. I don't know what that means.
It's such a crazy combination of nationalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it gets the point that I don't think this is a deliberate. It's not deliberate. I think that it's fallen into this space from my feeling. Yeah, because the geography. I refuse to learn his name. To me, he's just the geography teacher.
Kaji.
He the way he responds to it sort of shows that that's not where it is taking it at all. But it still has those kind of notes, and. Yeah, it's difficult. It's one of those things that is difficult to do. I'm not sure there's a good way to explore the sexuality of a 14-year-old.
I think it is just like it's such a big concern of people that are at that age that I think it would be kind of disingenuous almost to be like to kind of sort of, you know, take like a clean pass view of it to be like, okay, well, we got to cut out all the stuff that, you know, won't fly on television. We can't act like there's anything, you know, of that nature about these children or these people when, you know, that's clearly the age when it's like beginning to be their big concern of like how they see themselves and how they want to be like, you know, adults.
If there's a way to do it, I think this show does it the best. But in terms of Kaji, if Kaji would be visited by Nerve's HR department, I think, for some of his behaviour. Like the way he reintroduces himself to Ritsuko. It's not
Yeah, he definitely acts differently when they're off age, you know.
Oh, Kaji.
What a Chad. What a Sigma male. Sigma male does sound like one of the throwaway like tech terms they'd use in Ava. He was like, it's like, Sigma male pattern on this Ava, on this angel, you know.
I don't know what else I'd say. I feel like I if I have one takeaway, it's that the first 13 episodes have been good. Could be better. Could rely less on a constant formula. But really, I'm excited to see where the show goes because I'm more interested to see what these next 13 episodes are like. I mean, it sounds like they kind of go off the rails in terms of exposition, but not in a way where it's going to make me like go, oh, like I wanna know more about all of these so far very vague things that they've been talking about, and I want to see how extreme the show gets. I want to see what this elevator scene is. I want to see the episode where Asuka becomes a good character. Basically, the things that I want to talk about, the things I haven't seen yet, and that's why I've not said so much on this episode. I'm afraid.
Should we do everyone kind of says what their favourite episode is, and then maybe Johnny and Ethan could make a few predictions and we could wrap up?
That sounds like fun. Yeah, let's do that. Should I go first?
Yeah.
So
you go first.
I really like Jonathan's favourite episode, which he'll talk about, which we've already talked about a little bit. I also like Shinji running away. I think that's great, mostly because of the really calm and very kind of pensive shots of the countryside. I mean, Shinji really does run quite far away in that episode. It's actually amazing that they catch up to him so quickly.
Practically all the way to Cookham.
Yeah, literally.
He's on the run for 2 days.
It's so funny that he like runs away, but then just like bumps into his classmate. It's just like, sorry, what?
What are the odds?
Were you running in a circle?
Yeah.
No, it's a small city.
I'm also a really big fan of the Big Gun episode, but I also really like the most recent episode that we've watched because I can't remember her name. I know we've mentioned her, but the scientist.
Ritsuko.
Yeah, we've had some really good stuff with her recently in that episode, finding a bit about her past, a bit about the relationship she had with her mother, and I think the most interesting stuff is the way that she talks about how her mother programmed, how her mother programmed the Avas, and I think that's really cool. So that episode's been good. I also quite like I like the design of the angel in that episode in the sense that there isn't one. It's just this invisible force that's kind of eating away at the headquarters. Yeah, and I really like that a lot. So it's been a good episode. Also, actually, the big reason it's a great episode is because it has just been. Sorry, what's she called? The scientist? Did you say Ritsuko?
Ritsuko.
It's been Ritsuko and what's the other character? Begins with an M. Matuso?
Misato.
Sorry, I'm really bad with Japanese names.
That's alright. It's hard to remember, especially when fucking Asuka's name is Asuka Langley Soyu. You're meant to believe she's German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that those two were kind of, pitted against each other, but kind of ended up working together, which was really nice, and that we didn't see very much of the 14-year-olds. Asuka especially, like it was so great for that.
This is duck in a pod.
Ejected, and then just like the final shot, it's just them just somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, is anyone going to come for us? That is an episode I really enjoy. But I have to talk about Human Work episode 7 because that I don't even. Here's the thing where it's like I don't. It's just the episode that has stood out to me. It was the first one watching it where I was like, yeah, actually, I think I enjoyed that episode. And for me, it was the first time you have the first bit where Shinji is just kind of like, hey, what are the Avas? Like, it's the first moment you sort of feel like is, well, I guess he always kind of is questioning things as he goes along, but it's the first time he feels more like a character instead of just a like insert audience surrogate that just gets wheeled into a different location. You have he has a bit of sarcastic banter with Mitsuka. Butchered the name there because I combined it with.
That's all right. Just go by hair colors. If that's easier.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's gently misogynistic about how he now understands why she doesn't have a boyfriend, but he has a moment of character and sarcasm. Anyway, and then you roll into this sort of interesting, very different problem, which is this sort of other group that is kind of vying for the nerve business, such as
the slice of the pie.
Yeah, it's like the only view into that piece of kind of world building you ever get. Like, I think the episode might even start with people like on the train going into work.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's the first time it begins to feel like it's fleshing out the actual world and what's there, and some of the politics that is there, and some of the things the characters are wondering. And it's the first time you have a big concentration on. I guess you've had like the previous two episodes are kind of about Rei, but it's the first time, at least I felt. Maybe it's because I like Misato, that it shone out to me more of being like, oh yes, it's kind of looking more in depth about this character, and it's one of the ones I like. That is part of it. But yeah, no, it was, to me, it was the first episode that felt like, hey, we're gonna start doing some stuff now. And then the next episode I did not enjoy, because that's when Asuka shows up, and it's just like, oh no, wait. I mean, you guys say how it's like the arrival of chaos and stuff like that, but it just sort of it felt not so good. Anyway, there's me rambling about an episode.
The thing that I like about Asuka is what you said about how she changes the group dynamic, and she is almost like a spanner in the works in some sense, where she just kind of makes things feel less stable because of how her persona, her personality is so overpowering and so, forthright and just out there.
She is a great contrast to both Shinji and Rei.
I do agree with that.
The way she plays off them is pretty great.
Yeah, so I like her position in the group. I like how she works with the other characters. But it's just when it comes to her as a person, it feels like, I think I said this when we were messaging about this character. I know you guys kind of disagree a little bit, but I think within an episode, she'd already felt like she was a parody of herself. It was like I could predict the way that it was like I was able to predict the gist of how she was going to respond to something being said to her or a particular situation arising. I'd know exactly how she was going to deal with it, to a point where it feels like in a show that has characters that have a lot more bark to them and a lot more going on to them, this character has almost instantly just become a stereotype of herself and just lacks the nuance that I would expect with characters in the show.
I think that is part of her deal, though, is that her very boisterous, her very like, hey, I'm right, I'm the leader, no button ahead mentality, is the fact that it is like a sort of performance she does, like, to herself. There are moments where you catch her being honest with herself, where she just says something, it's like, okay, come on, we have to do this, and she says that she's speaking to herself, So I think that is part of, like her deal, is that it is like something she's putting up. She is putting up this, like, I'm the best, I'm here to show the world how great I am, persona, which is, quite thin when you look at it.
I see that, but on the beat-to-beat exchanges that she has with other characters, it feels like everything she says just makes you want to go sigh.
I kind of love it though. Like, I love it when it's the episode where the power is taken out of Nerve, and she's like, "I'm the leader," and then Rei will say what they have to do. It's like, "Hey, no buttoning, I'm the leader. Let's do what Rei said." It's so good. It's so good.
I think it's because just in general, I really don't like characters and things that are that are like obnoxiously arrogant. I mean, what she really needs is to get inside one of those Avas and have Saitama come and just, come over from an episode of One Punch Man and just hit the Ava once, see her go down, and she realizes that she's not all that. That's what I think really needs to happen.
Well, I think there are moments where she realizes she's not all that, and it
Yes,
does
I like those.
show that she is like at the end of the day just a 14-year-old girl who will cry if you make her upset.
There's
I
the
think that's
part in Magma Diver where she like accepts help from someone else, and for me that was like a big moment of character development for her, that she realizes that yes, she has strengths. I'm not saying that she's bad at her job. She's pretty fantastic. It's just her personality is really toxic for me. I don't like arrogance in characters to the point
That's
where
fair
it
enough.
becomes
I
unbearable being around them.
I think everyone does have in this show like a serious like detrimental like personality trait. Like no one in this show is like a good healthy person, and I think the fact that they have so much responsibility is what compounds on that.
But what about what come on, Tony, with someone like Commander Ikari? I mean, he's like the most, he's most likable, sympathetic. I mean, he's got everything down. He has a great relationship with his son. It's a wonder of a human at work, or whenever he's on screen, with his hands clasped together, elbows on the desk.
Oh man, yes, I love that. That's one of those poses that is just like, it's one of those poses that's like, it's like the bike shot in Akira where it sort of grids to a halt. It's one of those things that has just like almost become a thing on its own that has permeated pop culture. Is the idea of like the mysterious, scientist type with all the cards close to his chest doing the hands clasped thing, and like the eyeglasses like catching the light so you can't see their expression other than their mouth doing like a weird like kind of smile, like hit all according to plan. I really like that.
But yeah, in terms of episodes, episode 6, as we sort of talked about the big gun episode. As a Misato fan, that's just a very satisfying one. You kind of get the conclusion of the Rei Shinji like mini arc. First 4 episodes, I know Johnny said you get a lot of kind of like Shinji being inquisitive in episode 7, but I think episodes kind of 1 to 5 are pretty much just like focused on him and his interior world. You kind of episode 1, obviously him arriving. 2 is fantastic, I think. You kind of you get settled into the status quo. You have 3 and 4, which is kind of him making friends and running away and stuff. And you kind of understand how his relationship with his father and the fact that he ran away all those years ago kind of dictates almost everything he does now. And then I guess from that point on, he's trying to find a reason to stay, a reason to get in the Ava, other than just not running away. Tony talked about the episode where there's no power. I think that's one of my favorites because, like you say, you get some great interplay between the 3 children. It's maybe the only time you see a different side to Gendo, as you can see him like manually kind of working to kind of get the HQ back. I think it's really funny that the Avas are powered by diesel as well. Like, how much fucking diesel would it take to power an Ava for like 5 minutes? Oh my god. Another good one. Obviously, synchronization has a massive payoff, but I think it's a fun episode because I think it's pretty much, you have Asuka on the ship, which I say I'm not the biggest fan of. The episode 9's her kind of coming into the show a bit more and kind of clashing with Shinji, and I really like that dynamic. And Monster of the Week stuff is pretty solid. I really don't like Magma Diver. I think of the stuff Johnny was complaining about with Asuka's characterization and the way she's framed by the camera, it's definitely the worst episode for that. In that her arc is that she wants to wear a swimsuit, but then has to wear a fat suit, and then it ends with Shinji getting an erection, and that's the episode. It definitely felt a lot more like fan service in a bad way than the rest of the show. But yeah, Magma Diver's pretty weak.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely is the odd one out in a run of good episodes, in my opinion, that stretch from the Jet Alone one up until fucking where we stopped. I think they're all great apart from Magma Diver, which is just like. I think it does have good moments with like the characters in the sort of quiet moments, but I feel like, I don't know, compared to the action scenes in either 8 or 6, which is the Ramiel one with the big gun, or I think probably my favourite is I don't remember which number it is, but the one with that's the orbital one, where it comes from space. I just love the shot with, again, going back to where we spoke earlier on about the Avas, about how like it is Unit 1, is just running across the countryside trying to stop this meteor from destroying the surrounding landscape. Like, I get if it's not your thing, but for me, there's such a sense of weight that is imparted when you have a mech show, because you really feel that sense of scale. If it's not just someone, running and, with their human legs, it's this giant robot that leaps across power cables, and the wind blast, knocks all them back, and that sense of speed, and then the fact that it just comes under there right at the right moment, and it's fucking full AT fields on, is great. I really like that.
You should watch the rebuild films, because like that scene in particular, the first film is like a recap of the first 6 episodes. It's very loyal, although it makes some improvements by like someone telling Shinji like a good reason to stick around, which no one does in the show for a very long time. But yeah, the second film kind of condenses episode 7 to episode 19. It kind of pushes that all together, and their version of that scene is so much more over the top, in that they have to use Tokyo 3 as parkour to get Shinji there. Like, he has to jump from building to building and like up the side of ramps that they're lifting up as he's running. But yeah, that seems a lot more so
good. Yeah, I just love
it. Goes on for a lot longer in the film.
I think that's why I wanted to pick, the choice was, between 2 mech shows for the final episode of Animediate. And honestly, more so in Gurren Lagann, where that has a very like expanding scale as the show goes on. But like, there's something that I think only anime does really well, where it is this like a larger than life conflict that happens on the screen. For at least me personally, I really feel like the weight off in those dramatic moments, in those moments where Unit 02 has a big tarp on it and it's wearing it as a cape, and it jumps off a battleship onto another battleship, and then it goes underwater, and then it blows up an angel, It's like that sense of scale is what I really like. I think Eva's good, yeah.
Should we do predictions?
It's a very difficult show to predict, because there's nothing just stopping just another character arrives with a suitcase, like, here it is, the second human, Eve. Just like, then everything just becomes something else completely different. Like, I guess it is laying some sort of groundwork for, I don't know, characters feeling sad.
That's pretty much it. You pretty much nailed it.
That's my prediction. They'll get sadder.
The Human Instrumentality Committee just become a different thing. I don't know if they got bored of it, but they just changed their name and their design. Yeah. But it's the same characters. So I think they
upgraded they went from having Zoom meetings to having Microsoft Teams meetings, and they had changed all their avatars.
Which again is like one of those things, like the Kaji subplot, another one, incredibly confusing to a first-time viewer. Like, it just makes no concession. That Kaji subplot, fucking hell, I don't even understand it still.
Yeah, I feel like he's up to something. He's currently my suspect number 1 for the person who turned off the power in the headquarters. Even if he was just like trapped in an elevator the whole time, but like, he's of like the named characters, like, he is the one who is just kind of like feeling like he's kind of sneaking around and not supposed to be there. Any predictions you can think of, Ethan?
I think I like your idea about that guy being the Kaji. That's his name, right?
Yeah, geography,
Geography
teacher.
teacher.
Oh, I mean, more cover teacher.
It does
but,
look
you
like
know.
a geography teacher.
Yeah. So I do like him to be for the one who sabotaged Nerve HQ for some reason. As for predictions, well, I predict that there's one episode that has a really elongated scene in an elevator. I think.
That's cheating. That's insider trading right there.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. So
Get no points.
I guess I don't know. I do have this faint memory of like us watching. What was it? Was it called Devilman Crybaby? That was that show that we watched, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got to the
Mm-hmm.
ending, and I don't know if Harry had watched Neon Genesis Evangelion at this point. I don't think he had. But I remember that when we finished the show, Tony mentioned that. Well, I don't know, but I don't remember what he said, but he definitely talked about Devilman Crybaby in the context of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I don't know if it was tonally or if it was thematically, but if it's narratively, then I think the show's going to end with the end of the world. That's my prediction. The entire universe just completely gets destroyed, and then the film comes in and either. Well, actually, no, that probably happens in the film because the film's meant to be a lot bleaker, and the TV show's meant to be a lot more optimistic. So I'm sure the last couple of episodes will have this really massive threat that like threatens all life, and then in the film, what will transpire is that they didn't beat the threat that they did in the TV show and the threat won, or something like that. I don't know. But I know there's going to be some serious shit in the last couple of episodes if the film just basically takes the last two and then does something different with them. I don't know more than that.
I think you'll have an element of almost self-destruction, I think, sort of stuff. Because at least that's the feeling I'm getting with some of these angel stuff, is that they're a kind of almost retribution for the transgression of man, if I want to use weird words. Just because it seems like what they're heading towards is that the second impact was not the defensive mission. It sounds like they want. Well, the first thing they try and sell it as is just a meteor strike. That's the thing, and then it's like, oh no, it's that time when humans first encountered the angels and did that defensive war in Afghanistan. It's like, yeah, it sort of has that kind of feeling of. I think it's gonna turn out that that humanity has sort of started this war, because you definitely have that feeling of the angels as almost like I mean, unnatural but natural, in a way that the Evas are like this. I don't know.
Yeah, they're almost as monstrous, aren't they? Like they're called angels
Yeah.
first of all, which draws upon like the irony of them being angels, and then like just you don't get like a big sense of it. But there's just glimpses that there's something fucking weird about these Evas. Like, what even are these things?
I mean, you see that big eye in episode 2.
The angels are kind of naturally unnatural, if that makes sense. They feel like a force of nature, but this kind of weird and alien thing, whereas the Evas feel unnaturally natural, in that they're these sort of like kind of man-made, human-created, kind of biological, mechanical somethings. Yeah, there's an interesting dichotomy between the two there. Oh, another long word. Look at me go.
I'm definitely with you on
Draws
that,
it out of
Jonathan.
you.
If I had, I know that there's plenty of unanswered questions right now, and my thing is that I don't care if they don't answer any of them. I'm along for the ride, and the burning question that I have is where the fuck do these angels come from? I mean, they just kind of appear without any sort of without seeming like they don't even really have a source. Some appear in space, some appear in magma, in crevices somewhere on Earth, and you don't really know where they come from. But at the same time, even though I would like that answered, I also think that I don't really care, and I would prefer it if the source of these angels was left unanswered, because my gut instinct, or what I think, is that they're just aliens. That's what I assume, but that could just be complete bullshit, basically. And I do like the idea that they're basically coming back to punish humans, and that's why they keep attacking all that humans basically brought the fight to them in the first place. Maybe realizing it, maybe not realizing it. I don't know, but they're all really, really interesting questions, and I look forward to seeing what happens for the rest of the show.
All right. Well, we'll see you for the next half. Everything is according to plan. Now we will move on to phase 2.